Tony Blair comeback plot as former PM holds secret talks, wants to fix reputation. Tony Blair has been holding secret talks with members of Boris Johnson's government, in a bid to repair his reputation and make a de Gaulle-style comeback to UK politics. But the former Labour Prime Minister, who held the role for 10 years, quit politics in 2007. But Mr. Blair has become increasingly involved in the government's coronavirus strategy, by holding talks with Tory ministers and health experts and commissioning reports on how to combat the pandemic. An insider said the 67-year-old is plotting a return to politics and aims to mimic Charles de Gaulle, who was re-elected as French president, 13 years after leaving office. Since the start of the coronavirus pandemic, Mr. Blair has focused on policy to tackle the deadly disease. He repurposed his think tank, the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, to address the COVID-19 pandemic. The former Prime Minister has held several meetings with leading figures, including Health Secretary Matt Hancock, where Mr. Blair offered strategic advice on mass testing and vaccines. The 67-year-old has also been in conversation with Baroness Harding, the head of NHS Test and Trace, and Steve Bates, a former Labour advisor who sits on the vaccine task force. The former Labour politician has received high praise for his coronavirus strategies, having been an early advocate of mass testing, the use of face masks, quarantining and most recently increasing the time between the 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. In one document he even used the term moonshoot when outlining a mass testing strategy, the name that was later given to the government's mass testing scheme. In December, Mr. Blair also called for the UK to delay the second dose of the COVID vaccines, in a bid to ensure more people received the first jab. The government later adopted the approach, and said the second dose would be given towards the end of 12 weeks rather than in the previously recommended 3 to 4 weeks. Nigel Farage has even heaped praise on the former politician and called for him to head up the country's vaccine efforts. The Brexit Party leader said, "We are in a national crisis and a government of all the talents, including Blair, makes sense." He seems to have a grip on this far more than the cabinet. An insider told the Sunday Times Mr. Blair is determined to imitate the resilience of Charles de Gaulle. The French politician became the provisional leader of the country from 1944 to 1946, overseeing the end of the Second World War. De Gaulle then quit politics, before returning a decade later and was elected as the President of France in 1958. He held this post for 10 years, until 1969. The friend added that Mr. Blair has spent a decade making money and now has no shortage of that now and wants to re-establish his reputation. A spokeswoman said the former Prime Minister has spoken privately to others in government and is happy to help in any way he can. While appearing on Good Morning Britain, GMB, last week, Mr. Blair called for the government to throw everything at their vaccination programme in order to get half of the UK population vaccinated by the middle of March during an interview on Good Morning Britain. The former Labour Party leader questioned why the Conservative government have not implemented round-the-clock vaccines. Mr. Blair also suggested administering the coronavirus vaccine in polling stations and pharmacies.